Thousands of elite Roman legionaries marched into the damp British mist expecting to put down a minor local riot. This was supposed to be easy work. Then, the fog cleared, and they realized they hadn't marched into a riot. They had walked straight into a slaughterhouse. Standing atop that chariot was Queen Boudica. Her back was still raw from Roman whips, and her eyes were filled with vengeance. She didn't just fight Rome. She turned their cities into ash, slaughtered 80,000 imperial citizens, and left a layer of soot so thick it is still buried beneath the modern city today. This is killer royalty. Okay, so to understand how one woman almost single-handedly dismantled the world's most terrifying military power, we have to look at the absolute catastrophic mess Rome made in the year 60 AD. Britain back then was basically ruled by wealthy Celtic tribes. Queen Boudica's husband, King Prasutagus, ruled the Iceni tribe of the modern-day Norfolk. Now, the king was a peaceful guy. He knew Rome was a giant violent neighbor. He really didn't want on the front line, so he played nice. Before he died, he wrote a will that was supposed to be a diplomatic masterpiece. Half of his kingdom went to the Roman emperor, and the other half went to his wife and their 2 daughters. Simple, fair, everyone wins, right? Yeah, Rome did not agree. The moment the king breathed his last breath, the local Roman procurator, a guy named Catus Decianus, who might genuinely be one of the worst bureaucrats in ancient history, decided that treaties were more like optional guidelines. Instead of taking his 50% share, Decianus decided, you know what, we'll just take all of it. Roman tax collectors marched in like the mob, confiscated private property, and started treating free citizens like prisoners. And when the queen politely pointed out, hey, this is completely illegal, the Romans didn't pull out a legal team. They decided to make an example out of her to break the spirit of the Britons forever. They dragged Boudica into the public square, tied her up, and whipped her back raw. Then, in an act of sickening cruelty meant to completely erase her family line, they brutally assaulted her teenage daughters right in front of her. Now the Romans walked away thinking, great job done, she'll never trouble us again. What they actually did was unlock a final boss origin story. Here's where Roman arrogance bit them in the absolute worst way possible. They thought they were dealing with a heartbroken mother. They didn't realize they were dealing with a brilliant strategic mastermind who now had literally nothing left to lose. She didn't just rouse her own people. She secretly sent emissaries to surrounding tribes who were also sick of Rome's absurd taxes. She had assembled a terrifying coalition of possibly over 100,000 furious Britons. And their first stop was Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, which happened to be the administrative flex of Roman Britain. And get this, the Romans were so confident nobody would ever dare attack them that they hadn't even bothered to build a defense wall around the city. So when 100,000 angry Britons showed up on the horizon, it wasn't a battle, it was complete chaos. The surviving Roman officials barricaded themselves inside the stone temple of Claudius, praying for reinforcements. Boudica's army surrounded it and burned the temple with its defenders trapped inside. When the Roman Ninth Legion finally showed up to help, Boudica ambushed them in the woods and wiped out almost every single soldier. By this point, news reached the top Roman governor in Britain, Suetonius Paulinus. He rushed down to London, or Londinium, took one look at Boudica's giant approaching horde, and basically said, nope, we're out. He made the brutal execution decision to abandon the city to save his army. What happened next was total destruction. Boudica turned London into absolute ash. And if you think ancient history is just exaggerated rumors, modern geology has receipts. If you dig about 13 feet beneath the shiny financial district in modern London today, archaeologists regularly hit what they literally call the Boudican destruction layer. It's a thick, dark red ring of burnt soil, melted glass, and charred debris. Forensic analysis shows the fires were burning at over 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt glass and warp metal. Around 80,000 Roman citizens died across 3 cities in less than a month. At this point, Emperor Nero back in Rome was reportedly so alarmed, he even considered abandoning Britain altogether. But Governor Suetonius had managed to rally thousands of heavily armored legionaries. Meanwhile, Boudica's armies had possibly grown over 200,000 people. And honestly, they were so confident that they were going to win that the warriors brought their families along in supply wagons, parking them along the edge of the field like a first century tailgate party to watch the victory. That overconfidence turned out to be fatal. Suetonius picked a narrow gap with the dense forest behind the Roman line, meaning Boudica couldn't use her massive numbers. As the Britons charged down the narrow gap, the disciplined Roman ranks stood like a brick wall and unleashed thousands of heavy iron javelins. When the Britons tried to turn around and run, they hit a literal wall. Their own family supply wagons blocked the exit. It turned into a catastrophic nightmare, and the Roman line pushed toward them like a meat grinder. It was a catastrophic defeat, but Queen Boudica proved one final time that she was never going to play by Rome's rules. According to the Roman historian Tacitus, refusing to ever be captured, chained, or paraded as a trophy through the Roman streets, she took a lethal poison right there on the field, dying on her own terms. Rome technically won the battle, but Boudica got the ultimate last laugh, because 2,000 years later, we're still talking about her. And her revenge is literally baked into the dirt under London. Next Thursday on Killer Royalty, we're diving into the royal who literally ate his way into an early grave. If you love that story, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment with the most unhinged history fact you know, and I'll see you next week.